Growing Pains. Written by Misery. Read by Ashe. Most regions of Fargus were crisp and chill, but this night the feeling sank into Ashe's bones. The war on Fodlan still pressed on, and while the kingdom was finally seeming to stand a fighting chance, it was hard to see what the future truly had in store. They'd been fighting a pointless war, or so most would say. Both sides were, said others. Perhaps they all spoke their truths. Ashe could never fathom why Edelgard did what she had. He'd almost been forced to fight under her banner after all, but thanks to the goddess, Ashe's life was spared by one single choice, to return to his previous classmates. Ashe stared up at the starlit sky, leaning back on the stump beneath him. Times were easier back then. The most one would worry about was passing certification exams, or finishing a mission that didn't result in a visit to Professor Manuela's infirmary. When there was nothing but choir practice and stable cleanings. When his classmates would make a silly comment during a lecture and cause everyone, even Professor Byleth, to burst into laughter. When things were simple, and people were kind, and this mess around them was nothing but an unimaginable outcome. Ashe shook his head, trying to remove the thoughts that constricted his mind. He'd come to find how much he missed the academy, how much he missed seeing Felix and Caspar sparring on the training grounds, and missed Ferdinand and Marianne tending to the horses, and missed Dorothea and Flane singing and dancing in the courtyard. "Stop it," Ashe found himself saying aloud. A lump had begun to form in his throat as he rubbed at his eyes. It didn't matter now. None of that mattered now. What mattered was staying alive. Just for one more day. The letter his siblings last had sent him gave him some confidence. The tide was turning. But for how long? He sighed deeply, rubbing his arms gently. The notion reminded him of his mother, but he wasn't sure why. But seeing her blurred countenance on the back recesses of his mind made his heart ache. He couldn't recall the sound of her voice anymore, but he could remember her tight, warm embrace, an embrace that always reminded him that all was okay, and support was within arm's reach. Sometimes he missed being held like that. He used to see his peers around Garreg Mach hold each other like that, pulling each other close soon after a good laugh in the dining hall, after successfully hitting the center of a target with their arrow, after an overwhelming mission. Sylvain held Professor Byleth like that once, Ashe remembered. He remembered how the knots had constricted in his stomach when he saw it. He could never explain why, seeing that had bothered him so much, but he remembered seeing anyone embrace each other thereafter in such a way only pulled those knots tighter. The feeling had reminded him of Kristoff and the silly comments he used to make. Enjoy being youthful and take a chance, he would say, as if taking a chance was as easy as stringing a bow. No, it seemed that everyone back then was eager to take a chance with one another, but romance was never something Ashe had even considered at the Officers' Academy. Yet some of his peers made it look so easy. His parents made it look so easy. Kristoff, even. To be so willing and able to throw caution to the wind and devote oneself solely to another. Ashe figured that's what being a knight was about. And yet, as this war dragged on, Ashe realized the feelings weren't equal. Devoting himself to the kingdom and to Dmitri was a feeling unlike what his parents had, unlike what the couples had. A bit of a bittersweet feeling, it seemed, loving something that so easily could be lost to the hands of fate. His parents, Kristoff, Lenato, this damned war, all of it was a painful reminder of how short life was. Every second counted. But he'd be lying if he said that any ounce of that love and adoration wasn't something he felt he missed out on now. Maybe he should have taken his brother's advice. Maybe he should have taken a chance. He wanted to. Oh, so badly he wanted to. But then again, what was the point anyway? Dedicate himself to someone and run the risk of having lost them already to another? There was only one person he would have done such a thing towards, but it was silly to even consider the thought. Yuri had said so himself all that time ago. "Pick a better contender, Sparrow," he could hear him say now. But in truth, no one else came to mind then, nor even now, as outlandish as that was. He heaved another sigh, staring up at the sky once more. That's when a soft rustle came from the bush behind him. his head shot back, hand already reaching for a concealed blade he kept on his person, always.
"It's just me,"
said a voice Ashe recognized instantly.
"Sorry to scare you."
"Sylvain," Ashe groaned, not knowing if the pounding in his chest was from being startled, or from just Sylvain himself. "You could have called out, you know."
"And here I thought that would have scared you more," Sylvain laughed,
flashing that dazzling smile of his, guiding his steed into the clearing.
"What are you doing all the way out here by yourself?"
"I could ask you the same thing." Ashe sighed again. "Didn't take you for one to like late-night strolls."
"I'm a man of many secrets,"
Sylvain said with a quick wink as he walked over, his mount following beside him.
"No, I was actually looking for you."
Ashe's heart skipped upon hearing that. "Me? How come? Coming all this way looking for me makes me think something is wrong."
"Is something wrong?" No. I asked you a question first,"
Sylvain said with a smirk, as he removed the reins and bridle from his equine companion, letting her roam freely.
"Turning in early isn't like you. If you really wanted to sit out in the cold by yourself, you shouldn't have let Happy catch you walking this way to begin with."
"Betrayed by an ally," Ashe said with a weak laugh, staring down at his hands upon his knees.
"Interesting choice of words,"
Sylvain replied, taking a few more steps closer and crouching down to Ashe's level.
"The fighting getting to you now?"
"I'm not immune to it," Ashe replied, wrapping himself in his arms again. "Being alone doesn't really help, though." Sylvain's voice was much softer now.
"Believe me, I've tried that. Can I help shoulder anything for you?"
"You've got a lot on your plate, I'm sure," Ashe said with a shake of his head. I wish I could be as nonchalant as you are, sometimes. Maybe that would make things hurt a little less."
"In truth, it doesn't."
Ashe turned to him, locking onto the honey-brown eyes so close to him. His eyebrows were scrunched together, and his half-smile only made that tightness to return to Ashe's chest.
"It only gets you so far," Sylvain continued. "Soon, you'll realize faking it is what makes it harder."
"I want this war to end, Sylvain," Ashe said as he pulled his eyes away, preoccupied himself with the thin twigs below his feet. "But I'm worried it might not. And I honestly don't know how much more I can take before I spiral out of control."
"Hey," Sylvain said, placing a warm hand against Ashe's arm. "The only spirals I want to see from you are those delicious cinnamon buns you and Mercy made for us."
"Sorry," Ashe whispered as he rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand.
"Don't apologize," Sylvain said, squeezing Ashe's arm. "None of us are immune to this mess. Sometimes feeling things is what helps, or so I've been told."
"I'm not so sure if feeling is helping much either," Ashe sighed. "I've not been able to get much sleep these past couple of nights. My mind is a constant buzz all day long. No tea I brew is enough to calm my nerves."
"Got a bad feeling about something?"
"Yes. No. I don't know," Ashe said with a shrug, before looking back to Sylvain. "Do you ever feel like, no matter what you're doing, it feels like time is just passing you by, and you just can't keep up with it? That's how I've been feeling. Like I'm running a race, but I keep tripping over my own feet, and I'm worried that my mind is going to cost someone's life on the battlefield if I'm not careful."
"You're not alone out there," Sylvain replied, his eyes locked on Ashe. "Don't ever forget that. We've all got your back, so don't think for 1 minute that you've got to fight anything alone. All right? I get where you're coming from. Trust me, I think most of camp feels the same way as you do. I know I do."
"Great,"
Ashe forced out a laugh. "We're all cursed with it." "Better all of us than just one, right?" Sylvain said with another smile.
"Right," Ashe replied with a weak smile. The tightness lingered in his chest, but the warmth of Sylvain's hand was enough to keep himself occupied. Sylvain really didn't have to come all this way just to listen. And yet, here he was, ever so eager to lend an ear, even if he didn't always have the answer to everything like he led on. But that's the side of him that Ashe found himself falling for during their youth, the honest side of him that he only showed a select few. And in truth, Ashe never had realized himself to be one of those few until only recently.
"That reminds me," Sylvain's voice cut Ashe from his thoughts. "You got a letter from your siblings recently, huh? I'd meant to ask, and I'm sorry if I'm being nosy. How's things with them? I know you've been worried about them.
They're doing better than before, Ashe replied. Rebuilding is strenuous, as you can imagine, but things are looking much brighter back home. It's the little things like that that remind me that all this fighting isn't as pointless as it could be, you know?
I'm sure. It's going to take a lot of manpower to get our lands back to what they used to be. But tell you what, once this war's done with, I'll make sure my father sends House Gaspard some extra aid.
Sylvain, Ashe said as he grabbed Sylvain's hand. Gautier territory is going to be so much worse off than us. Please, keep the aid for your own land. We can manage.
You can rebuild faster with more aid, though.
Sylvain, I can't accept that. Your people need your resources. Don't waste them on us.
I'm not wasting it if I know it'll help you. Besides, if it's not Gautier, man, Dimitri sure as hell isn't going to leave you on your own, you know?
Dimitri is a different story. You, on the other hand, there's no way we'd be able to pay you back for such help.
Just because he's king doesn't mean he can do my job better than I can.
Oh, don't start putting words in my mouth, Ashe said as he lightly tapped at Sylvain's hand. As king, of course he's going to send aid, so there's no need for House Gautier to do the same.
I don't know, Sylvain replied, turning his face up towards the sky with a smirk. You could always work for House Gautier instead. You know, that could totally make things even for the both of us, and then Dimitri can send whatever he wants afterwards.
Ashe stared at him for a moment, letting the words sink in. Where did you want me to... What?
You don't have to, you know, Sylvain laughed. I know I can be a bit much to handle sometimes.
Sylvain, Ashe started, but no other words came to mind. It was such a sudden idea, and it stunned him, thrilled him even. But that seemed like a boy's dream, didn't it? Being by his side for however long as possible, not having to worry about Gaspard territory, not having to worry about diplomatic affairs and the comings and goings of a government that was so terrifyingly nailed to his skin. But what of his siblings? Leave them behind? Take them with him? What of the people?
We could just pretend I didn't say anything if you'd prefer.
Sylvain spoke then, as he turned to Ashe.
I don't know. Beats being alone, I think.
Alone? Ashe echoed, pulling at a loose string on the hem of his sleeve. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? We're in the company of so many, and yet...
Feels like no one's really there to listen, huh? Sylvain said, giving Ashe a weak smile. Gonna be honest, Ashe. Seeing you down lately, it's doing something to me that I can't explain. You're one of the brightest guys here, and knowing you're hurting... I'm sorry I haven't spoken about it with you until now.
There's nothing to apologize for, Ashe replied, wiping a stray tear that had somehow slid down his cheek. I'm not so fond of others seeing me like this. I worry that my moping is bothersome, so I just keep it to myself.
Shouldn't, though. Don't end up like me, Ashe. It doesn't do you a damn good thing.
Answer me this. Ashe stared as Sylvain cocked his head to the side. Why do you keep it in? I know most people are hard on you for your flippancy towards most things, so why keep doing it? Doesn't it bother you what folks say?
People will always talk, Sylvain said with a sigh. Doesn't matter if you're good or bad. Someone's always going to talk. That's what happens when you're someone like me. My name means more than I do, so why not put on a show for them? Give them a real reason to talk.
But that's not who you are, Ashe said with a scowl. I know I've said some things to you in the past, things I do regret. Had I known you, the real you, sooner, I'd not have been one of the many to scold you. So why carry on with it?
It's all me, Ashe, Sylvain chuckled. It's a part of me. It's the only way I can be me. Every party needs a moody heartbreaker among the ranks.
This isn't a play, Sylvain, Ashe said, maybe a little bit louder than he intended. Making a mockery of yourself does nothing but wear yourself down. In the time I've known you, I feel that when I've fully gotten through your walls, you somehow throw them right back up. You're playing tug of war, not only with the rest of us, but with yourself. So tell me, honestly tell me, what do you gain from this? What do you win?
Sylvain stared at him, his expression almost unreadable. He sat there, staring at Ashe in silence, not moving, as though he were formulating a sufficient response. Ashe thought he'd cornered him for a moment, until Sylvain smiled. He smiled. "A distraction," he said as he stood up. "Even a little one. Reminds people that they're still alive." "What?" "That's why you came out here, right?" Sylvain replied, as he pulled Ashe up to his feet. "To get away?" Not a moment later, Sylvain pulled Ashe close and began to sway, pulling Ashe to and fro in a slow and steady waltz. It was almost funny. No music around, and yet the two kept in sync with each other with ease. They used to dance together during their days at the academy. No real reason behind it. It was just fun and silly. "Remember the last time we danced like this?" Sylvain said with a smile. "During the ethereal moon ball?" "Feels like eons ago now," Ashe replied. "I remember you trying to get Professor Byleth to dance with you." "And I was shot down immediately," Sylvain said with a forced frown. "Not sure how Claude managed to be so convincing." "Claude, I don't think, gave much of a choice," Ashe laughed. "Those were simpler times." "Weren't they?" "Sure were," Sylvain said, his hand on Ashe's waist, pulling him a tad closer. "Hey, remember what I told you then, at the Goddess Tower? That only sorry saps like us actually believe magic could happen there?" "Of all the things to remember," Sylvain said with a hearty laugh, and Ashe couldn't help to join him. He loved hearing Sylvain laugh like that. It was intoxicating. When Sylvain regained his composure, he continued, "No, not that. When I told you you got a spark about you that you shouldn't let go of." Ashe nodded. "Well, I still mean it." Sylvain smiled, squeezing Ashe's hand in his. "You're always looking out for everyone, and your selflessness knows no bounds. Honestly, I used to be super jealous of that. How you could make friends so easily, and not even think for 1 second they'd turn on you." "Whoa, wait a minute," Ashe said, his heart racing. "Where is this coming from all of a sudden?" "I told you that you stirred something in me. Jealousy wasn't really what I was imagining." "Used to be," Sylvain sighed, before flashing another of his bright smiles. "Look, Ashe, I think this goes without saying, but that jealousy has turned out to be admiration. You devote yourself so much to our group, and damn it, I don't like seeing you being so hard on yourself. You pull the weight of 10, and I'd be lying if I said we couldn't do a thing without you. And before you dare try to protest, I'm not going to let you." "Let me finish, please." Sylvain laughed as he pulled Ashe even closer. Their dance slowed, just before they stood motionless in the field, gazing into each other's eyes. It's just that... Wow. Your eyes are really pretty." "Sylvain?" Ashe replied, feeling the heat forming on his cheeks. His heart was pounding so hard, and he was sure his hands were shaking. Where was all of this coming from so suddenly? Sylvain tells him some embarrassing things in private, but this was a lot all at once. Sylvain started. A slight blush formed on his skin as he continued to stare. "This war, it's done this. It's made me think about things I hadn't before. Sometimes I really question what the hell I'm doing most days, and how most of my life I've already thrown away for other people. No matter how much I run, I'll always be thrown back to some place I don't want to be. But I know that sometimes people have to get some distance before coming back together." "Together?" Ashe started, his chest growing tighter as he tried to remember what words were. "You mean you and me?" "I'll be honest, Ashe. When I heard that Count Rose sided with the Empire, I feared I'd see you under their banner one day. You don't know how happy I was to see you at Garreg Mach during our reunion. It was such a relief. I felt like falling to my knees. I was so damn happy to see you." "And you," Ashe said with a weak smile. "When Count Rode defaulted, I couldn't turn against my countrymen. At the time, I thought it was just because of the hope I had for Dimitri to still be alive, but I really couldn't imagine fighting any of my friends, even though running was dangerous enough. I'd often wondered what could have happened if I didn't leave, but I'm glad I did. even as this war continues on. To think we could have been on opposing sides.
You're the last person I'd ever want to turn my lance against. I don't think I'd have been able to.
Even if your life depended on it?
Ashe said, half teasing, half curious. That arrow of yours already pierced me long ago.
You're teasing again.
Not this time, Sylvain said with a grin as he released Ashe's hand from his. Hey, if you don't want to work for House Gautier after all this, there is also another option.
Oh?
Ashe rolled his eyes as he slowly wrapped his arms around Sylvain's neck, a habit he'd somehow developed recently.
And what might that be?
Marry me instead.
Sylvain!
Ashe said, as Sylvain now wrapped both hands around Ashe's waist.
Is this really the time to be making jokes like that?
Who said I was joking? Sylvain smirked, with another cock of his head. I don't want you ever to feel alone again. Not while I'm around. You deserve nothing but happiness. And once this war is over, I want to make sure I'm there to see your flame glow even brighter. If that's something you'd want.
Marriage is a bit sudden, if I'm honest,
Ashe stammered. Being so close like this, Sylvain had to feel the thrashing in Ashe's chest.
Maybe slower steps?
Sylvain didn't say anything then, just leaned in closer. And before Ashe could do anything, the warmth of Sylvain's lips on his sent his mind racing. But he pulled Sylvain even closer, their bodies pressed tightly as Ashe returned many kisses back. A part of him wondered if it was just a silly fantasy playing in his mind. But then Sylvain pulled away to press their foreheads together. Ashe felt the warmth around him, setting himself ablaze. I won't let you fight this alone, Sylvain whispered, his words dancing across Ashe's skin. Not anymore. The end.